I never thought that a simple question, why is the joint account locked, would lead to me crumpled at the bottom of the stairs with my son towering above me, eyes full of hate. "It's none of your business," Derek roared, standing 2 steps above like he was preaching from a pulpit of rage. The hallway lights flickered behind him, catching on the edge of a photo frame. One of the few I had left, a frozen moment of his wedding day, back when I still believed he loved me. Pain lanced through my hip. My breath hitched. I tried to shift, but the agony was white-hot, blooming up my side like lightning. I reached toward the wall to pull myself up, to sit, to breathe, but I didn't make it far. And then she appeared, Lena. Her heels clicked down the stairs like a judge's gavel. She didn't gasp. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she folded her arms and said, flat as the tile beneath me, "You need to leave. Now." I looked between them, my body curled like a broken doll on their spotless floor. There was no concern, no hesitation. Just this, coldness. As if they'd been waiting for a reason. I couldn't process it at first. Couldn't believe my son, my child, was watching me writhe in pain and didn't even reach out a hand. "Derek," I whispered, "help me up, please." He didn't move. She stepped closer. "You fell. That's not our fault. We didn't ask you to come into our business. You need to go before the children come home." Business, that's what she called it. My savings, my home, my heart. I stared up at Derek, waiting for some flicker of the boy I once raised, the one who used to sit on my lap when he had nightmares, who asked me to sew his camp badge on with the good thread so it wouldn't fall off. But he was gone. The man who stood over me now wasn't ashamed. He looked relieved. I said, "Go," Lena repeated a little louder this time. She didn't shout. She didn't have to. Her voice had the chill of someone who knew they'd already won. I used the side table to lift myself upright inch by painful inch, hiding the scream in my throat. Every nerve protested. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Not in front of her. Derek didn't offer to help. He didn't ask if I needed a hospital. He didn't say a word. Just watched. I held onto the railing and took one slow step, then another. I could hear them whispering behind me, Lena's voice too smug to bother hiding. "We should have done this weeks ago." At the front door I looked back, just once. His arms were crossed now, like he'd just finished a chore. And I knew, in that moment, that this wasn't a loss of control. This was intentional, planned, practiced. They'd been waiting for me to become inconvenient. And I had. Because I asked about money I was told to share. Outside, the autumn wind slapped my cheeks dry. I stood on the porch, clutching my coat closed with one hand and my dignity with the other. Their door slammed behind me. That was it. Not a ride to the ER, not a phone call, not even a text. I limped to the sidewalk alone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to bang on the door, demand answers, demand love. But what was the point? They'd made it clear. I wasn't family anymore. I was just a wallet that talked back. And they didn't like that. Just weeks earlier, I had quietly sold my countryside home. The morning I left the cottage, I locked the door 3 times before I stepped off the porch. Not because I thought anyone would break in. It was habit. 17 years in that house. You don't walk away from that without muscle memory kicking in. The moving truck had already gone. Just a few suitcases left in my trunk, some kitchenware, a crate of old photo albums, and the vase Derek made in 3rd grade that I couldn't bring myself to throw out. He had insisted, "Mom, it's ridiculous you're out there all alone. We have plenty of space. The kids will love having you around." He made it sound like a rescue. At first, I resisted, told him I liked the quiet, the fresh air, my garden, but then he said it again. Families should stay together. It caught me, hooked me in the softest place I had left. After Robert passed, I'd learned how to carry silence like a coat. Some days heavy, some days warm. But when your son says the word family, you put the coat down and listen. He even sounded proud of the idea. Said Lena had agreed and that the kids were thrilled. He said there'd be a room on the ground floor just for me. No stairs, a reading nook. And maybe I could help with the school pickups now and then, if I wanted to. It sounded so wanted. I hadn't felt that in years, so I did it. I signed the papers. Sold the only home that was mine. I took the proceeds, every cent, and transferred them into a joint account Derek suggested, just for the transition. He said it would help smooth things over with Lena. She didn't love surprises. This way, they'd know the bills were covered, the groceries handled, the kids' school fees set. He said it would give me peace of mind. And I wanted peace. God, I wanted it so badly. So I told myself it was smart. Told myself I didn't need to cling to independence like it was oxygen. Told myself this was what trust looked like. Besides, he said one evening on the phone, this way we're all contributing. You're not just moving in, you're building with us. Building, that's what he called it. He made it sound like I was still useful, like I mattered. Lena called once that week. Her voice clipped in neutral. We'll be in the guest room until the renovation's done. The contractor will need your measurements for the closet shelves. You don't wear heels, right? I laughed awkwardly. No, not anymore. Right, just checking. That was it. The first red flag, and I missed it. When I arrived at their home, large, spotless, with a cold kind of beauty, I smiled too hard and offered to unpack immediately. Derek waved me off. Just relax, Mom. You're with family now. I slept that first night under a brand new comforter, but I felt the chill anyway. Still, I tried. I woke early, made breakfast, cleaned up, watered the back porch plants without being asked, helped with laundry, cooked dinners. Lena never thanked me. But Derek would kiss my cheek and say, "You're a lifesaver, Mom." That was enough to keep going, until it wasn't. And I think that's the worst part, how quietly a trap closes. One kind promise, one shared account, one just sign here, and before you know it, you've sold your safety for the illusion of belonging. No one told me that moving in would also mean stepping out of ownership, out of control, out of rights. But they knew. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I just wanted to feel needed again. At first, it felt almost normal, sweet, even. Afternoons in that house were filled with little footsteps, sticky fingers, and the smell of baked apples. I'd found a rhythm, packing lunches, folding tiny clothes, picking basil from the herb box Lena barely touched. The kids called me Granny Mags, which melted me every time. I didn't ask for much, just a place to be useful, a smile at dinner, a little warmth. But Lena, her warmth had a timer. I saw it in the way her eyes skimmed over me at the breakfast table, how her smiles never quite reached the corners. I brushed it off. She was busy, career-driven. I told myself not to expect hugs from a woman who measured everything in productivity and polish. The kids, though, they made it worth it. Little Max would crawl into my lap with his picture books. Ellie, already 10 going on 30, would whisper secrets about school drama and ask me to braid her hair before bed. They loved my stories, my pancakes, my presents. And for a time, Derek seemed grateful. He brought home wine for me once, said he appreciated all the help. "You're keeping the household afloat, Mom," he joked, but the jokes faded fast. One afternoon I noticed a new espresso machine in the kitchen. Sleek, expensive, still in the box. Lena said it was a work gift, though I'd never seen her drink coffee at home. Then Derek's car changed. Traded in the practical sedan for a shiny black SUV with leather seats and a sound system that could shake the windows. He acted like it was no big deal. Lease deal was too good to pass up, he claimed. I didn't ask where the money came from. I didn't want to believe it could be mine. Instead, I swept the porch. I ironed school uniforms. I spent my days in the garden they let me keep by the side fence, planting marigolds and watching bees land on the lavender I'd rescued from my old home. But at night, I lay awake. Lena would walk past my room without saying goodnight. Derek stopped popping in to chat. Sometimes I'd hear them whispering through the wall, fast, sharp whispers that ended with doors closing. I told myself not to be paranoid. Maybe it's just stress. I'd murmur aloud, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. But I felt it in the silences, the way Lena's voice would drop to a lower register when I entered a room, the way she stopped, including me in group chats about the kids' schedules, the way my favorite pot disappeared from the kitchen and no one seemed to know where it went. It wasn't loud, this unraveling. It was slow, sneaky, like a loose thread being tugged from behind. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that maybe I just needed to be more patient, that it was hard for young couples to have an extra body in the house. Maybe I was hovering too much. Maybe I was old. But then Derek came home one evening, grinning, holding a leather-bound menu. "Babe, guess what?" he said, tossing it to Lena. "Found a private chef service. Thinking of hosting a few dinners, maybe a poker night. You in?" She smiled at him, then glanced at me. "Oh, we'll have to keep it adults only. No offense, Margaret." She said my name like it was a borrowed coat she didn't like the fit of. I nodded, smiling, my hands in my lap. "No offense," I echoed, swallowing the sting. But deep down, something shifted. I was in the house, but not in their lives. They liked my food, my labor, my silence, but not me. I wasn't family. I was staff they didn't pay. It was supposed to be a normal evening. Derek had gone upstairs with the kids. Lena was working late, which now meant wine and her laptop on the patio, while she ignored everyone for hours. I was tidying up the kitchen, wiping down the counters, refilling the napkin holder, trying to feel like I still belonged. That's when I opened the drawer. It wasn't snooping. I was looking for the utility bill. Derek had asked me to check the water usage last week, said something about an unexpected spike. I didn't think twice, until I saw the envelope. Bank of Greystone, Derek's name, and mine. At first, I thought it was junk, but the weight of it wasn't a flyer. It was a statement. I stared at the numbers, confused. Large withdrawals, not one, several. $8,300, Creative Start Boutique Ventures, $2,000, Riverway Casino, $11,750, Vehicle Payment, Lincoln Elite, $7,900, Interior Redesign Consultation, all within 2 months. And all from the joint account. My savings. My chest went cold. I turned the page with shaking fingers. Each line hit harder than the last. Lena's boutique had been nothing more than a casual idea over coffee last winter. Maybe someday, when the time's right, she'd said. Apparently, someday had come. And Derek's poker nights, they weren't just ideas anymore. I wasn't just paying for groceries. I was funding their life, and no one had told me. They hadn't just dipped into my savings. They had swallowed them whole. The front door opened. I heard Lena's heels on the hardwood. She walked past the kitchen without looking in. I was still holding the papers when Derek came down, holding a toy spaceship under his arm. "Hey, Mom, what's that?" I turned the stack toward him. "You tell me." He froze. The silence between us sharpened like glass. He blinked once, slowly, then shrugged. "I meant to talk to you about that." "About what? The boutique? The gambling? The SUV you said was leased?" His face darkened. "You went through our things?" "Our things," I echoed, voice rising. "You used my money, Derek. You didn't even ask." He set the toy down. "Don't be dramatic. We're family. You said it yourself. You wanted to help with the kids. Lena's business is for their future. The car is so we can travel more with them. It's all connected." "Connected? And the casino?" I snapped. "Is that connected too?" He scoffed. "God, you act like I'm some kind of criminal. It was just a few games. I've got it under control." The rage in me was hot and rising, like magma from a place I didn't know existed. "You took everything, Derek. You didn't ask. You didn't tell me. You didn't even try to explain. You just helped yourself." He threw his hands up. "You're blowing this out of proportion. This is why Lena didn't want you here. You're always so emotional." I went quiet. That word had followed me like a ghost through my whole life. Emotional, meaning inconvenient, meaning unwanted, meaning too much. Lena appeared in the doorway, wine glass in hand. "What's going on?" "She found the bank statements," Derek said. Lena didn't blink. Well, she was going to eventually, like they'd planned for this. I stood there, shaking, every cell in my body screaming. But I didn't scream. Not yet. Then I went to a cheap motel. The room smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. The kind of place people come to disappear for a night. Cheap, quiet, forgettable. I didn't even remember checking in, just remembered the cold slam of their front door and the searing pain in my hip as I limped to the cab stand. The driver didn't ask questions when I gave him the address of the motel near the freeway. I think he saw the bruises blooming beneath my coat. The woman at the front desk gave me the key without looking up. Room 107. One queen bed. No questions. It wasn't comfort, but it was space. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the bed. My whole body ached. From the fall, from the betrayal, from years of shrinking into the background to keep the peace. They had taken everything. My home, my money, my trust. But they hadn't taken George. My hand trembled as I scrolled through the contacts until I saw his name. George Langston, attorney at law. I hadn't called him since Robert's will, but I'd kept him on my list. Just in case, he answered on the second ring. Margaret? His voice hadn't changed. Still calm, still steady. I need help, I said, and I don't want Derek to know I still have a durable power of attorney on file. Silence. Then, where are you? I gave him the motel address. He didn't ask why, just said, I'll be there at 10. I hung up and finally let my hand rest in my lap. The motel heater clicked to life. I pulled the thin blanket over my knees and stared out at the parking lot, watching the neon light from the vacancy sign flicker against the car hoods. My mind throbbed with a million regrets. I saw Derek's face as a child, laughing in the sprinkler. I saw Robert's hands planting sunflowers by the fence line. I remembered the first night in my old cottage, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, dreaming of a future where love meant safety. What had I done to raise a man who could watch his mother bleed and turn away? Maybe I had loved too hard, forgiven too easily, covered for him too often. Maybe I had confused being needed with being respected. I looked down at my bruised hands. No more. This wasn't just about money, it was about dignity. And if I'd been naive enough to think I had none left to lose, then maybe this was my chance to find it again. The motel coffee tasted like burned cardboard, but I drank it anyway. I needed the warmth even if it was just pretend. The morning light bled through the yellowed curtains, casting shadows over the worn carpet. I sat by the window watching traffic hum past the lot and tried to piece together how the hell I got here. One minute I was a mother moving in to help. The next, I was a burden to be managed, silenced, and pushed out. I stared down at my hands, wrinkled, faint purple splotches blooming where I'd caught myself during the fall. The bruises hurt, but not as much as the memory of Derek looking down at me like I was a mess he didn't want to clean up. And I couldn't stop replaying it. Not just the fall. The words. The shrug. Lena's voice, like she was sending a delivery back for being the wrong size. But it didn't start there. It started years ago, when Robert died. That was the first time I saw it in Derek. Entitlement. He was 26. Grieving, yes, but also angry. And not at death. Angry at responsibility. At the life he thought he deserved but hadn't earned yet. I made excuses then. Said he was mourning. Said he'd grow out of it. He never did. And I never stopped covering for him. I remembered the first loan, then the second. Then the time he showed up at 2 a.m. asking for help with a bounced check. I paid them all. Told myself that's what mothers do. Robert would have done it too, I thought. But Robert never would have let this get this far. Robert had a spine. He loved with boundaries. And when Derek tried to lie or manipulate, Robert shut it down. Me? I smoothed it over. Tried to keep the peace. Told myself Derek just needed more time, more love. All I did was train him to use me, and now he'd taken everything I gave and used it to discard me like I was no longer convenient. I stood slowly, wincing from the bruise on my side, and moved to the motel desk. George had asked me to write everything I could remember before our meeting. So I began. Dates, transfers, conversations, signatures. I wrote it all down, each word pulling me back through moments I'd ignored at the time. The way Lena had insisted on helping with the bank setup. How Derek had redirected every financial question with a quick, "I got it, Mom." I had let myself believe I was building something for my family. All I'd built was a trap. But not anymore. Today, the fog was lifting. They thought they had me cornered. that I was too old, too soft, that I'd take the fall and disappear quietly. But I wasn't done. I still had one thing they didn't count on: fight. I wore sunglasses and a scarf, not because I thought anyone would recognize me, but because I needed the armor. It was silly, probably. But when you've been humiliated in your own son's house and kicked out like a trespasser, the little things, disguise, control, become everything. The banker, a young woman named Alana, greeted me with the kind of bland politeness reserved for people she assumed were harmless. Good, that's what I needed her to think. I gave her my ID. She typed for a moment, then looked up. "How can I help you today, Mrs. Whitaker?" "My savings," I said. "The joint account with my son, Derek Whitaker. I need to see the full transaction history for the last 3 months, and I'd like a trace on all outgoing transfers." She blinked. "Of course. Do you have concerns about fraud?" I looked her dead in the eye. "Yes." She didn't ask another question. 10 minutes later, I had the printouts in my hand. Line after line of theft parading as family expenses. Spa days, delivery meals, designer labels. Lena's boutique fund was hemorrhaging money. Derek had pulled out $5,000 in cash 3 times in a single week. I signed the form to open a financial abuse case. It felt like breathing after drowning. Before I left, I walked over to the lobby and sat on one of the little armchairs by the potted ficus. I pulled out my phone, opened my photo gallery, and stared at the picture of Max and Ellie playing in the garden. They were smiling, covered in mud, carefree. I hadn't seen them in days. Online, Lena had posted a photo that morning. The 4 of them at brunch, Derek smiling, Lena sipping a mimosa, the kids making silly faces. You'd never know what had happened. You'd never guess their helpful live-in mother was now in a motel with bruised ribs and a lawyer on speed dial. To the world, they looked like the perfect family. But I knew better, and soon, so would everyone else. George sat across from me. He pushed the folder across the desk, then sat back, his expression unreadable. "You're not going to like this, Margaret." I already didn't. "What did you find?" He opened the folder again and flipped to the second page. "Your account authorized 3 high-value transfers, one to a private investor labeled Boutique Launch Partners, another to something called Deckhouse Consulting, and one flagged for Crypto by Direct." I nodded. I'd seen the transactions. "He used the joint access." George shook his head. "No, he submitted digital approvals. Your signature, your consent." My breath caught. "What do you mean digital?" "He forged them, Margaret. These weren't casual transfers. Each required consent beyond simple joint access. Facial ID, PIN verification. He bypassed it, likely used saved credentials, maybe even lifted data off your phone or laptop." I sank back into the chair. Everything inside me burned, not just from anger, but shame. Shame for trusting him, for not seeing this coming, for handing him the keys and being surprised when he drove off with the whole house. George's voice softened. "We can file criminal charges, fraud, identity theft, elder financial abuse, if you're ready." I looked at him. My face must have said everything. "I was never ready," I whispered. "But I'm not hiding anymore." He gave me the paperwork. "I'll also initiate a freeze on any property transactions. You're still on the deed, Margaret. That house is yours, legally." I stared at the last page. My signature would start the avalanche. I picked up the pen. No more soft passes. No more giving Derek the benefit of the doubt. No more pretending this was anything but betrayal. I signed. The burn in my chest settled into something steadier. Resolve. A little later, I moved into a senior living community. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, kitchenette, no unnecessary frills. But it was mine. The senior community overlooked a pond where ducks gathered in the mornings. My neighbors were quiet, mostly widowed women who nodded politely in return to their jigsaw puzzles and low-volume television. No one asked what brought me here. No one pried. I was grateful for the silence. My room came with a garden plot, just 20 square feet of dirt, but it felt like acres compared to the cold concrete back porch I used to sweep at Derek's. I planted cherry tomatoes and lavender first, something useful, something calming, Watching new life poke out of the ground gave me something to hold on to. The hip still ached from the fall. Purple had turned to yellow, and I had to sit down often when bending, but I was healing. Every day I checked my phone, not for Derek, but for evidence. I had started saving every message, every voicemail, Lena's sharp texts, Derek's veiled threats, even the "you'll regret this" voicemail he left at 2 a.m. I played it twice, just to confirm he sounded drunk. They didn't think I'd do anything. They still saw me as the quiet one, the wallet, the woman who says yes. But the phone was building a case now, and I wasn't scared anymore. The day the flower delivery arrived, a smug peace offering from Derek, I placed the bouquet outside the building with a note. Wrong address. Try respect next time. I was no longer trying to keep the peace. I was keeping my peace. Later, I met with a representative of the Financial Crimes Unit. They called her Agent Flores, mid-40s, sharp eyes and a voice like someone who'd heard every lie twice. She came to the senior center conference room with a clipboard and a quiet authority that made my hands stop shaking. "I've read the complaint," she said. "We see cases like this more often than you'd think. But yours is well documented." I nodded, sliding over the folder I'd compiled. Printed voicemails, screenshots, texts from Lena with phrases like, "Don't say anything to the bank," and "You promised you'd stay out of it." Derek's voice messages had a special kind of venom, each one a reminder of how quickly love can curdle into resentment. Flores flipped through the pages, expression tight. "This is strong," she said, "very strong." I said nothing. I didn't need to explain. Every time I'd tried to explain before, to Derek, to Lena, to myself, it ended with me questioning my own sanity. Now I had proof, and people who actually listened. She walked me through the process. Subpoenas for the digital signatures, IP tracking, statements from the bank. It would take time, but it was moving. My case had a file number, a timeline, real consequences. I left the meeting with a thin packet of paperwork and a thicker sense of power than I'd felt in months. Back in my apartment, I sat on the little patio chair, watching the sun dip below the pond. I pulled out my phone, not to check for Derek's calls. I didn't care if he called. I hoped he did. Instead, I pressed record, and I told the whole story, out loud. What happened, how I was tricked, what I'd given up, what I'd lost, and what I'd found in its place. I wasn't crying anymore. I was archiving. A week later, the director of the senior center knocked on my door. "We're hosting a community seminar," she said, holding a flyer. "Financial awareness, elder protection. It's timely. You might want to come." I agreed. The community hall was plain, beige walls, lukewarm coffee, and too many chairs for too few attendees. But when I saw the poster, "Elder fraud isn't a shame. Silence is," something in me cracked open. Agent Flores was on the panel. She spotted me, gave a slight nod, then turned back to the podium. People shared their stories. Money drained, accounts opened in their names, signatures forged, homes lost. Each voice trembled. Each face looked like mine in the mirror 2 months ago. And I sat there, heart pounding, palms sweating, hearing pieces of my own life echo off strangers' tongues. Then someone said, "Would anyone like to speak?" The room went still. I didn't raise my hand, I stood. I could barely hear my own voice at first. My son forged my digital signature to drain my savings. His wife used the money to open a boutique. He said I was overreacting when I found out. Silence. I kept going. When I confronted them, I was pushed. Not metaphorically, physically. I ended up bruised and alone in a motel. And it took all of that for me to finally say, enough. My voice didn't shake. I opened the joint account because I believed in family. I said yes to protect my grandchildren. I sold my home to feel included. I was wrong. Not for loving, but for assuming love meant protection. Someone clapped, then another. By the time I sat down, the applause felt less like a reward and more like a chorus of women telling me, "You're not alone." I walked home afterward, the sunset bleeding orange across the sky, and I knew I had crossed something invisible but permanent, from silence to voice, from shame to strength. Later, I received a call from George asking me to come to his office. He met me at his office door, files in hand, before I even sat down. No small talk this time, just business. "The house is still in your name, Margaret," he said. "They never transferred the deed. You co-signed for renovations, not ownership. That's leverage." I nodded slowly. I wasn't sure if it made me smart or just lucky, but I'd take it. He laid out the paperwork on the polished desk. "I've filed an emergency injunction. It'll freeze the property. No sales, no transfers, no equity withdrawals. Not even a light bulb can be replaced without court approval." The absurdity of it made me snort. "Good. I hope Lena enjoys brushing her teeth in the dark." George cracked a smile but kept his tone firm. "We also added a request to begin repossession proceedings. You have legal grounds. Emotional abuse isn't enough for court, but financial fraud and forged documents? That's solid." The folder in front of me didn't shake as I signed. My hands were steady now. It was all so clinical. So quiet. No yelling, no door slamming, just ink on paper undoing every lie Derek thought he got away with. "You sure about this?" George asked. "There's no coming back from it." I looked him dead in the eye. "There's nothing to come back to." He gathered the papers. "We'll post the seizure notice first thing in the morning." A chill swept through me, but it wasn't fear. It was clarity. The house I used to scrub, the kitchen I stocked, the floors I swept, the windows I washed while Lena scrolled her phone and Derek gambled behind my back. It was all about to be mine again, not because I wanted it, but because they didn't deserve it. I didn't sleep that night. After leaving George's office, I went back to my apartment and sat on the edge of the bed with the packet of signed injunction papers in my lap. The silence was thick, but it wasn't heavy. It was waiting for morning, for movement, for justice to start knocking. At 6:30 a.m., I left my building in a cab. I asked the driver to park 2 houses down from Derek's. I didn't want them to see me. Not yet. The street looked the same, the grass neatly trimmed, the windows glowing with warm light. But everything had changed. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up 5 minutes later. 2 uniformed deputies stepped out, one holding a folder marked with bold red print. "Seizure notification, active order." They approached the front door calmly, professionally. One pulled out blue tape and a stack of neon orange signs. I watched from a distance, hidden in the cab, breath tight. The first notice went on the front door. "Foreclosure in process, property frozen by court order." The second on the garage. The third on the side window, where Lena always posed her brunch photos. The door flung open. Lena, hair wild, robe barely tied, face twisted in confusion that turned fast into rage. "What the hell is this?" she barked, grabbing one of the papers. "There's been a mistake. My husband owns this house." "No, ma'am," the deputy replied, unfazed. "Property records indicate Margaret Whitaker is the legal owner. You've been served." I could hear her even from the cab, shrieking. Derek appeared behind her, bleary-eyed, bare-chested, stammering. They were unraveling in real time. And I didn't move, didn't smile, didn't cry, just watched. I thought it would feel like revenge. It didn't. It felt like gravity restoring itself. Like the floor beneath me finally stopped tilting. Like truth got tired of waiting. I asked the cab driver to circle the block once before heading back. I didn't need to see any more. I'd watched them stumble out onto the porch barefoot and yelling. I'd seen Lena tear the notice from the door and Derek try to shove it back at the deputy like he could undo it with enough bluster. But court orders don't fold under tantrums. Back in my apartment, I slipped off my shoes, poured a glass of water, and sat at the small kitchen table. The potted lavender on the sill caught the morning light. Peace. That's what it felt like. Then the phone rang. Derek. Of course it was. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. His voice came through like an explosion. "What the hell did you do? The sheriff was just here. The house. Mom, what did you do?" I sipped the water. I took back what's mine. "You're ruining everything." Do you have any idea what you've done to us? I laughed, quietly. You mean what you did to me? You can't just take the house, Mom. We live here. And I lived in that house too. Until you pushed me down your stairs and told me to leave. He paused, like the weight of his own words finally echoed back at him. I was angry. We were under pressure. Lena. No, I said, calm but cutting. You took everything I gave and used it to erase me. That account, that home, that money, you treated it like a windfall, like I didn't matter. Lena's boutique is gone now, he said, voice tightening. She's devastated. Is that what you wanted? To humiliate us? What I wanted, I said slowly, was respect. What I wanted was not to be lied to, stolen from, and tossed out like I was trash. There was silence, a long one, then a softer voice, Lena in the background, pleading. Just be a mother, Margaret, please. I stared at the wall. I was, I said quietly. But neither of you were children. You were leeches with dinner reservations. Then I hung up, not out of anger, out of finality. I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand. My heart was thudding, not from fear, from release. The phone rang again, and this time I almost didn't answer, but I did. Mrs. Whitaker? This is Michelle from Greystone Bank. I sat up straighter. Yes? We just wanted to confirm that we denied a recent attempt to open a checking account in your name this morning. There was a discrepancy in the identification, and your fraud alert blocked it. Standard protocol, but given the active freeze and ongoing investigation, she didn't have to finish. Who tried to open it? I asked, though I already knew. She hesitated. It was Derek Whitaker. Of course it was. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall across from me. He didn't understand. I called Agent Flores, told her about the bank. She didn't sound surprised. Thank you for calling, she said. We'll be adding that to the active file. This strengthens the fraud case substantially. I nodded, though she couldn't see. I just want it to be over. It will be, she replied, and when it is, you'll have everything back that matters. But I already knew the truth. What mattered wasn't money. It was this feeling right now, this fire in my chest. Not anger. Power. I hadn't felt it in years. I stayed seated long after the call ended. Derek had tried to use my name again. Even now, with foreclosure signs on his lawn and a fraud case building under his feet, he still believed he could spin one more lie, start one more scheme, crawl deeper into my bank accounts like a roach looking for crumbs. But now, every move he made only helped me, and I wasn't hiding anymore. The next morning, I took the bus into town. No more cab rides, no more ducking into buildings like a fugitive. I wore a clean blouse, my mother's brooch pinned at the collar, and walked straight into the county courthouse. Agent Flores met me in the hallway with a grim nod. We filed the civil case this morning, she said. Elder financial exploitation and identity fraud. You'll get the summons copy in a few days, but Derek's already been served. It was fast. Too fast for him to dodge. I let the words sink in. And Lena? Flores raised a brow. She's filing for divorce, officially, citing, quote, irreconcilable misconduct tied to financial deceit, probably trying to salvage what's left of her reputation. Of course she was. She hadn't tried to stop him. But now that the walls were collapsing, she wanted to slide out clean. Too late. Later that week, I walked past her boutique downtown. The windows were bare, no displays. Just a taped-up sign, closed for inventory, thank you for your support. No lights inside, just shadows and dust. A few days later, I got the call from the neighbor across the street, Mrs. Caldwell. She'd always been polite but distant. I thought you should know, Margaret. A blogger picked up your story. Someone posted about the foreclosure, and, well, it went viral. I laughed, genuinely. You're joking. Not even a little. People are calling you the quiet hurricane. Someone even made a meme of me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The blog post had gone up the day of the seizure, apparently. A neighbor's daughter had written about the soft-spoken grandmother who took her son's house without raising her voice. The internet had run wild with it. I went online, just once, and saw the headline, "Don't Mess with Mom, the Calm Revenge of Margaret Whittaker," and beneath it, the comments. She didn't scream. She signed paperwork, power move. Family doesn't mean free pass. Respect the hands that raised you. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness.